welcome to the Spirit Hunters podcast. I'm Lance White Eagle, and joining me are
Hunter White Eagle,
Chrissy Holtz,
Lisa White Eagle,
and Shane White Eagle.
And today we're just going to be giving some background information on our group members and talking some about our first hunt. So, Shane, would you like to start? Give some background information on you and maybe some, in brief, some events or whatever that made you interested in pursuing.
Well, we're Native American, and all our lives we used to do powwows and traveling, meeting a lot of different types of people. In our, culture, and most Native cultures, we're raised believing in spirits, and that they're as real as you and I, and that's how we talk to them. So, we've all had our own personal experiences. I've had things where I seen, or ghosts, or whatever you want to call them, when I was a child. Kind of got me interested, and then we've had a lot of experiences since then. Lisa, my wife, has had many experiences. I'll let her tell you. At least one.
I don't really have any off the top of my head, but my whole entire life practically. I've been around them, see them, hear them, smell them.
Attracts them. We'll get into that more on other podcasts.
Yeah, I don't know.
Didn't you, Lisa, grow up in a haunted house?
Oh, yeah.
had a portal.
Every house that I had lived in, it had,
all of them.
It had something, or a few somethings. But you get used to it. It's just like every day. It's like an everyday life.
With us, including in this house, we have a couple spirits. All the neighbors were aware of it before we bought the house. And, a lot of families moved out as soon as they bought the house and lost thousands of dollars on the house because of these spirits. But they're friendly spirits.
They like to watch me
with
when
them,
I'm
and we
sleeping.
set boundaries, just like
That's
we
a
would
little odd.
anybody. The Hunter's had a couple more personal experiences with the guy upstairs. But Lisa has had, haunted houses her entire life, probably because she has a tendency to attract stuff. So that could be a contributing factor. Chrissy?
I've just been fascinated with the spiritual side of things since I was a kid. When I was younger, I can remember sitting around and reading books on the paranormal, and with my friends, we'd sit outside till 3 o'clock in the morning and read scary stories and whatnot. And then I've had some experiences of my own, like the one place where I worked, there was stuff that used to kind of like projectile fall off the shelves while we were working in the back. So I have experience that way, and just I tend to be sensitive to things like that. So I just and then when I ended up meeting these guys, we started. I think it was about a year ago we started
Just
doing
over,
this,
yeah.
and so it was like something I'd always wanted to do.
And believe me, these three guys seem to have a lot of sensitivity stuff, so we use them a lot in our investigations, which you'll see.
Now,
We're the bait.
your family, though, Christine, has a history of spiritual sensitivity, correct?
My dad's side, it was my great grandmother and grandmother. They'd kind of have like visions, and it got kind of passed down to my dad, who it was mainly with me, like some weird connection with me, but he'd know things that he shouldn't necessarily know, like something like bad would happen that day, and he wouldn't go to work till later because he would get some weird feeling, and then the car broke down and he had to come, tow the car
Good
for
to have
me.
that kind of stuff.
Things like that. So he would get feelings. I just get sometimes like just feelings like I kind of know something before I really 100% know it. Kind of like that, but
That's cool.
I personally, currently, live with two of them. When I was in the military, I started doing this thing where I would listen to, like a horror story or some kind of music, whatever, before I go to bed, just to relax my mind. The one day I was actually on YouTube looking for a story to put on, and in my ear I hear clear as day a whisper saying, "Who are you?" asking me who I am. And I look over. Obviously, I'm in my skivvies. I'm using my iPad light to try to see if there's nothing. There's nothing there, And
We need video of this.
it definitely threw me off.
Stay tuned for that
Yes.
reenactment on Spirit Hunters After Dark.
Yeah. Spirit Hunters gone wild.
Yeah. But no, we've all kind of had these experiences in one way or another since we were kids, and we all just kind of got used to them, learned to live with them, But it's a fun little thing. But
Now, Hunter, when we're on a hunt, what is it that your kind of specialty is?
I'm the equipment field technician or specialist. My job is to set up all the cameras, put these lights with IR cameras and IR lights, different EMF readers, different whatever, to get everything going, and then we place them where we need to have them. But it takes a lot of time. But it's fun to do. We need it done, and I have a pretty good knowledge of it. So
We all have our roles to play. This is the core group. I have a group of about 14 people and the other 6 or 8 part-timers. We all have little things that we do. Lance does a lot of the editing. Chrissy looks for locations. She does soon to be multi or media platform assistance. So we all have different roles in the group.
Yeah. Now, you have, Christine, a background in mental health and psychology. Does that help you any?
I don't know if it helps me or hinders me, but I like to talk to ghosts like they're my clients sometimes. The thing is, we're going into their space, so I want them to know that this is a safe space for them. We're not trying to invade their space, and I try to kind of talk to them and understand their feelings in a way.
And Lise, your specialty seems to be the divination using the divining rods. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I wouldn't call it a specialty.
I mean, none of us can do it. That's a specialty.
Something you're special at.
It's got its ups and downs. Like Shane says, don't ask anything you don't want the answers to. So,
and what are the divining rods for anybody who may be watching or listening who's not familiar with?
Actually, you know what? They're in my car, and I was going to bring them out, but I didn't. But they're just an L-shaped copper wire or a rod, basically. And they're kind of like on a little spindle, and I hold them in my hand, and I ask a question, and the spirits that are around will answer. Not like full blown out, but yes or no answers. They'll point me in directions as to where I go. A lot of the times they'll be like, "Show me," and they'll point me to where I have to go.
Nice.
And sometimes they just say, "Don't talk to me."
Oh yeah, there's been a long time when I'd ask them, "Can I go on such and such an investigation?" Nope.
Nope.
They should go, but you shouldn't.
Exactly. Yep. Almost every single one.
Shane, you do most of the scouting and finding and then finagling people into forcing us into their homes.
Research, skip tracing, networking, and getting locations, making partnerships. Recently we partnered up with the County Department of Tourism. We're going to have a couple, at least a few co-ops with some historical societies in the area, in the county. And more recently, we are looking at a possible partnership with Lilydale. So we'll see how that goes.
That should be pretty fun. I don't know about you guys. I'm really looking forward to that place.
Yeah. that
Lily
should be
Dale, I
good.
think, is going to be an exciting.
Well, we
place
haven't
to-
actually said yet, but we're doing an investigation next week of Lilydale, and we are the first
Surprise.
paranormal group to be allowed to do so, including the television shows. So it's kind of a big deal for us.
That helps out native.
And hopefully we're going to be doing several there in the future. That's the plan, at least so far. And, we're going to go from there. We also have many, many other locations we're going to be getting to hopefully this winter and next year.
So our very first, which was actually kind of a trial run for the equipment and things.
Hen
Our
Coop.
first was at the Hen Coop Hollow Cemetery in Ellicottville, New York. And I actually don't remember how we got to that location.
Well,
Well,
like how we
got
found
lost.
it.
Yeah,
like,
we got lost.
Well, how,
and then
no.
abandoned.
Well, yeah, I know how we decided that we were going to go to that.
Was it the book that we?
It was the book. One
there
of
was
the
a
books we
book
saw
that
in
you
one of
guys
the books.
had haunted cemeteries in our area. We were looking at Frewsburg that one, and we decided to go with that one.
It was a book of like all haunted locations and attractions. It was in Western New York.
Western
right?
New York.
I believe it was by
Northeast
Bill
Pennsylvania.
Robertson, who wrote it.
Oh,
the
yeah,
two
that's
books.
right. Yeah,
Actually,
we
I
met
was
him.
working at the newspaper in Bradford at the time, and we went to a festival in Wildcat Park, and we met him, and we purchased 2 of the books from him. And actually,
It's pretty cool.
yeah, we should network with him as well.
Yeah, we should because
Well,
he's
So
He's
Bill, if
obviously
you're
knows
a
watching,
ghost
about-
historian.
He knows
Yeah.
all the
Right.
locations.
Yeah.
Obviously, he wrote about it in
Yeah.
the book. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'll put him on my list.
yeah.
But yeah, back in I think it was beginning of October of last year, or was that? It's either at the end of August or beginning. Either way, sometime last year, about a year ago,
Hen
we
Coop?
Yeah.
yeah.
August the last.
August, okay. Went and found, and it was I don't know how we found it. Literally, it was pitch black out. We were going down all these weird roads until we just happened to look out there was like 3 of us, 3 different cars, right?
Yeah, with spotlights out
With
the
spotlights
windows.
trying to find it because it sits 20, 30 feet off the road. And so I'm sitting there driving, looking at my window, and I just happened to look over and caught a glimpse of the light reflecting off the one grave. So we stomped our brakes really hard. We looked out and lucked out, and then we kind of were there for several hours.
Hen Coop's a 300-plus-year-old cemetery with a lot of history.
A lot of
Unfortunately, most of the stones that are now been knocked over and under grass, so you can't tell
and sunken
the
in.
full
Yeah.
variety of people's there. But we had some pretty cool.
Lots of
Happenings.
children
Lots
from
of-
a
yeah.
TB
tuberculosis outbreak.
Yeah, and a good number of children just from families that were, in those days. The one family we saw in there had 4 young children that passed away. Another one had 3 or 4. So there was a lot of children there, and that was the story about the place. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to go there. Unfortunately, the placards that they used for the TB kids are long gone or buried. But we had a lot of spooky occurrences there.
Yeah, like I was saying, it was our first investigation, so we were definitely under prepared equipment wise. But we
What-
did pretty good with what we had.
What
you know?
equipment did we have at that time?
We had
grid.
the laser grid.
That was the
that
first time we
red
tried
K,
it.
Yeah.
the red EMF reader, the millimeter one, the big one. We had
A couple cameras.
the SLS camera. We had the one REM pod.
No SLS yet. I don't think. The RIM pod.
Yeah, we
We
had
had
the
one-
We did. I just
It just it wasn't,
wasn't
working.
working. Right?
It wasn't working, which
Um,
doesn't half the time.
Yeah, and we had the one REM pod, but I think other than that and like a couple cameras, that was about it.
Yeah.
Obviously now we have so much equipment compared to Hen Coop the first time that we only want more. We want a bunch more cameras, different recorders and different things like that. But for what we had, we did pretty good at Hen Coop.
Now, Hen Coop is situated kind of in the middle of the woods. It's just cut out of the tree line. The closest house would be, quarter of a mile away?
Yeah.
Well, there was an old schoolhouse that was across from there that was remodeled into a home, and that was only a couple hundred yards. The rest of them are pretty far away. Yeah. I think the old house is only used as a summer home, so we did have something really interesting there happen.
Oh, I'll start off because I was the one that originally noticed it. But we were hearing some things in the woods, right? That's what we were doing. We were looking at the one side of the woods. I was like, "Oh, I'm a veteran." Talking to one guy.
There were coyotes and things, but we did hear lots of branch breaking. Now, with the coyotes, when we first got there, we saw them. They kind of looked at us. They scoped us out, and then, like most animals, they backed away.
Mm-hmm.
What we started hearing as the night went on was larger things coming closer to the cemetery rather than moving away from the sound and the laser
walking
lights.
through the leaves.
Not even just coming closer. Like it would scatter back and forth from one different side to another. You know what I mean? Like we'd hear a break over here, we'd look over there, and then we'd hear it on this side.
Yeah. Now, did you have the rods then, Lise?
I think she did.
No.
No?
No, not yet.
No, because I got them for Christmas last.
Oh,
Christmas.
so right after. Okay.
Okay, so before we get to the big thing, what were some? If you guys can remember, it was a little over a year ago now. But do you recall any occurrences?
You can go ahead.
I have the one, and it was actually Hunter and I saw this. It was the first time we had ever used the grid. It's basically like a flashlight that shoots out like a green grid.
It's a laser.
Laser grid.
Very
and
powerful.
we were walking through, and unfortunately, like we said, we didn't have a whole lot of equipment at the time, so we didn't get it on camera. But something very like tall walked through the grid. Like out of the corner of my eye, I could see something actually like walking, moving through.
Well, let me explain the grid right quick. So the grid is not too. It's literally hundreds of these different little green laser dots, and what the idea is that if something were to walk through it, the dots would shift with whatever's reflecting off of it, and that way it makes it easier for you to see. You can point it out what direction it's going, whatever.
Right, shadow figures, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything that has something
mass.
solid to it.
Yeah.
Now, what you guys saw, was it like man size or child size?
It was man size for sure.
Yeah, it was pretty
And
tall.
it was. I don't remember vividly, but I remember that it was definitely like a solid figure, almost kind of like we just saw at the Genesee Falls Inn. But we were a little further away, not like super close or super far, but it was close enough to where we obviously were like, did you see that type of thing? But yeah, it was definitely an adult size figure of something.
Yeah. Lise, did you have anything that you can recall at the first round of Hen Coop?
Not then and there on the spot. But I'd like to do like a lot of recording on my phone, and we picked up some really cool whispers and
EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon. She did actually. I remember had several of them back then.
Yeah. Do you recall any specific? Could you hear any like specific words or sentences?
We did,
Yeah.
but I don't remember what they were. I remember you caught quite a few things in your phone.
yeah. So there was one time when me and Shane were looking at the family. What was it, like 3 or 4? They had 3 or 4 kids, and we were going over the ages of the kids and whatever. And when I was listening back to the EVP, we heard she sounded pretty young, a pretty young female. That
I remember. Okay.
that she said it was either something like, "Don't let them hurt my babies" or "Don't let them take my babies."
Something like that. Yeah.
Well,
Something.
or don't hurt my babies.
But
like
she
that.
sounded really sad.
Yeah.
She did. A young woman.
It was one of the most clear EVPs that we've caught. But there was. Should we say that part?
Yeah.
So, I don't know why, but at all of our not all of them, but most of our investigations, I tend to get
Yeah, tell them about the tree thing first before we get to
the
that.
tree thing.
Yeah, you heard tree breaking, snapping, and then you went over there and something.
That's
Yeah,
what I was going to say. So
He said something.
we could hear something in the woods, right? So I was in the very back line of the last few graves in the back of the cemetery, and we were talking. There was a bunch of us. I think we were either getting ready to pack up, or we're doing like one last minute, talk session or whatever. But we hear this big old branch break right behind this grave. You know, it's a really well manicured grave. You know, someone took care of it. I'm over there right beside the grave, trying to look into the woods behind it with the spotlight, and then something like cupped and kind of like flicked my butt cheek. You know, and it just kind of was the first time I got, you know, groped by whatever it was.
It's the first time you were groped?
By
A spirit.
You heard
Yes.
it here, folks.
you're right here. But no, it tends to happen a lot in these places.
Getting groped?
Being
Yeah.
touched,
Being
being
touched.
touched in
Yeah.
some way,
In
not
some-
not necessarily your butt. Although on a later podcast, you'll hear much more about butt stuff coming up. So stay tuned for that. Now, Shane, do you recall anything specific from our first investigation that really kind of intrigued you, or?
Well, intrigue-wise, I really like reading the stones, and I like looking at the history and stuff. We did hear some things that could have been something, but it was kind of hard, especially with the equipment we had. It wasn't easy to review later. But, you know.
I do believe you got some pretty good EMF spikes, though.
Yeah, we did get some good EMF spikes in key areas. When Lisa was talking about the EVP recording of we think a mother, we got high EMF spikes there. That's an electronic magnetic field. Shouldn't be there. There's no power there. So something was, energizing to a point where we could read it. And we had some other ones in other locations. I just don't really remember the
Yeah,
specific-
Right on
we've
the
been
spot,
on a
yeah.
lot since
We've
then.
been on several, since then.
Yeah, we could.
But go ahead and tell them about
Oh,
the ghost light.
so I'll just start because we were in the woods. We were on the edge as we were talking to somebody, and they were like, one year, I think it was Lisa or Dad was like, "Hey, tell me you're a veteran, see if you can get them to communicate, or whatever."
Yeah, there was a tombstone. Some of the stones in there are going back to Civil War, Revolutionary War.
1700,
Veterans.
1800 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were on the wood line, and we were talking. I was like, "Hey, I'm a veteran, blah, 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 blah." Trying to get whatever it was to communicate with us. And I don't know why. One random way, I happened to look to my left in the middle of the woods, and it's a tiny little white light. You can see it is way off in the distance. And for whatever reason, as soon as I turned my head, that's the first thing I snapped onto. And then from there, I'll let you take it and see.
Well, you called me over, and Shane and I are pretty vision impaired, so it has to be pretty clear for one of us to see it. And
No, it was you. That's right. Because I was like, "Chris, you have good eyes." Yeah.
Yeah, it's when you looked at it, it's kind of like when you look in the sky and you see like a star and you have to kind of like look away to
Really
see it.
gotta-
when you look
yeah.
at it, it was kind of like that. It was like this like glowing light that when you looked at it,
It like
it
faded
was
It's
out.
hard to
faded
focus
out.
on.
Yeah.
It was
too,
very
so
hard.
there's
Yeah.
Trees in the way. you
Several
had to look
hundred
at
meters
certain
into the
angles.
woods.
But it was noticeable enough that us
Yeah.
blind
blinder
folk
people saw it.
could still see it
Yeah.
pretty clearly. And on a later visit, you and I and Justin and Scott went all the way through those woods
Far as
until
you could go.
we found
Like
a house.
Yeah.
And I would say that was, I don't know,
Several hundred.
farther than that, almost
It
half
was
a mile
pretty-
probably.
yeah.
We trekked through those woods because you get to a gravel quarry
pit,
first,
yeah.
and then past
Yeah, so
that,
like 300-400 meters at least. You're more than that.
oh, more than that,
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Before you even get to a power line for the first houses.
Jeez, yeah, that's pretty cool.
So there would be nothing out there to produce a light.
The thing about this light was though it showed some sort of intelligence.
yeah, so
Yeah, you should probably explain that. And that gravel quarry and how that almost got
Yeah.
there.
So okay, so we decided that a couple of us would walk into the woods to see if we can make out what it was, to see if it was just like a random light way off in the distance somewhere or what.
I think
Let's-
it was
Stay in the back and
Yeah.
watch the light to guide us.
Because
And-
one of us as indigenous people listen to our legends and stories about following things, trying to get your attention out into the woods in the middle of the night.
But Hunter, Chrissy, and I went looking for it. Lisa's like, nope, I'm not going in the woods with something like that. She went to the car. That was kind of fun.
No, I think where were you?
She was in the car. She was
Oh.
getting cold.
So we went looking through there, and every time we got close to what we thought we were getting close to, it'd be farther away and farther away.
And it dawned on you.
Then it dawned on me that, I've heard these stories before, whether it be with Bigfoot stories or will-o-wisp or, native versions.
Before you get to that, though, not just farther away, but also move
It's like
left and
move
right.
Left and right.
Well, that was once I made the
Like, instead of just going
Yeah.
straight, it would also start trying to veer you
Well,
into
that was
a direction.
once we realized that we're not getting closer, and then I'm thinking, because we're getting ready to go through this brush, it dawned on me that maybe we're being led into the woods. So I started looking around, and there was a huge drop off in front of us. Then I'm like, hey, wait, something's going on here, and then it went.
For the
like that.
audio listeners, it started to go back and forth, left to
true.
right, to try to, almost like an
Like, hey, look
anglerfish
at me.
Yeah.
Like,
would do
Kinda like
to
saying-
attract prey.
yes, exactly.
Just a little light weaving and moving up and down, side to side, to try to further entice you guys to going in. And as I said, on our next trip, we discovered that it's an old gravel pit back
Yep.
there.
Yeah, a deep, deep hole that would have likely at least broken a lot of
Yeah.
bones,
Yep.
but killed us.
But then when you guys came back to the cemetery, it was back in its original spot again.
Yeah.
Uh,
As if it would never even moved at all.
Yeah.
But
And of course, by moving, that tells you a couple things. It's either a person, or, at first I thought maybe it was like one of those old natural gas flames.
Yeah, St. Elmo's fire.
Yeah, they would,
call swamp,
used to do
swamp
in
lights.
certain places.
definition of a
But by moving, that tells you it's either, something like a man in the middle of nowhere in state forest land, or perhaps something paranormal.
Yeah. Shane had mentioned the will-o-wisp, which is what we call it, which goes back to various different mythologies, often associated with dead children. And they would be lights, sometimes called fairy lights with the Gaelic peoples, but generally not a positive entity
No.
that would
Lure you away.
try to lure people into the woods, either to get lost or into some type of harm.
Right.
But that was probably the most exciting on our first, and we'll
On
get
that,
to
first
Hincoop number 2
Part
here.
2.
But what you brought up kind of brings me into one of the first questions that we've had asked, and we can take turns jumping in and answering this, because I think the definition might be different for everybody. But we had somebody ask what the difference is between a poltergeist, a ghost, and a demon. So if you'd like to start us off, Shane.
Well, to me, it's pretty obvious. A poltergeist is typically a spirit or an entity that's developed from a living person, somebody in turmoil, pain, agony, anger, and they develop it, or sometimes groups of people, but mostly it's one person. A demon obviously is a demonic being. Poltergeists can be dangerous because typically they're the really negative, hatefulness parts of ourselves that are being manifested, and then they grow into something. They're as real as any other ghost. They're they're in a different way.
And then a ghost, you said, was just,
A ghost, we can call ghosts and spirits two different things. A lot of times we'll say spirits. A ghost is a human is earthbound for whatever reason, whether it was unfinished business, traumatic death, they don't realize they're dead, or they just want to stay there because of familiarity. They have a home, a place that they enjoy. Maybe they're afraid to go on. Spirits, typically, how we see of them are spirits that have gone on to the next plane, but then can visit. What you might say, someone going to heaven or something like that. We kind of call a lot of times ghost spirits, but you kind of get the idea.
Now, in our culture, and this is just a question I'd like to get you to elaborate on, Christine, because as you may have noticed, the 4 out of the 5 of us our last name is White Eagle. We're all related and have a similar cultural background.
I know her and I look alike, but we're not related.
Yeah.
That's actually my uncle. That's my father and my mom. So
Genetics are weird.
Weird.
But I know in our kind of cultural upbringing, we do believe that there are entities that we also call spirits that were not human ever, and they're not necessarily demons.
That's a different
but
thing.
they never had a
to
human
go that
form.
deep into this one.
Well, not necessarily, but I was just wondering, Christine, if like with your background, is that something that you would heard about too, other than like angels and demons?
About
Like, do you believe
spirits?
necessarily in like
anything else that's
maybe entities that weren't people at one point?
I was raised Catholic. In the actual like church, we mainly talked about like angels and things like that. But like in my own household, like my parents were both believers in the paranormal, spirits. My dad had his own experiences, so that was just something that was always like assumed that they exist.
Yeah, and a mistake that we've actually made is like you had told me that where we grew up, we mostly encountered. There weren't actually we didn't know many Catholic people per se. That we were on a basis to where you talk about things that people might think you're crazy for talking about. But you said like your church and things was very open, like amongst some of the religious groups that we grew up with, they didn't believe in ghosts at all. But you said your church, like, yeah, you believed in ghosts and things like
Well,
that.
her family. Anyway.
Not necessarily the church, but I did have a lot of friends and like through the church, and like their families did as well. So that's where I got that association from. Like the actual church. I mean, I think nowadays, like I think it's a lot more open to things like that. But yeah, just mainly the people I associated with in my family were.
Now, we also had asking, and maybe you guys could just say your favorite, because somebody asked, what do you need to start ghost hunting? So,
like equipment-wise?
Equipment-wise. Yeah, what would be your suggestion? We'll start over here. Yeah, with Lise. Yeah, the same. What would be your suggestion? Somebody's getting started. What's the first thing they get to?
I always tell people your phone.
Your
phone is the best thing. You can take pictures, you can take videos, you can do EVP recordings, which I do a lot. I do a lot of voice records on my phone, and I pick up something everywhere we go.
Yep.
So that's my main thing, my go-to.
Okay. Christine?
I was actually going to say something similar. I mean, it's something everybody already has, and it's something that you can use. You can gather sound, you can gather video on it. So.
Well, what was the first piece of equipment you got personally?
The Spirit Box, I believe. Was it the Spirit Box?
I think it was.
Yes.
You bought that one with something else.
I got that in the EMF reader.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And I just like gadgets in general, but I really enjoy the Spirit Box.
Yeah, which we'll elaborate more on later, but cycles through radio frequencies and things. Well, we should do a episode where we break down the different equipment
what they do.
Right.
Yeah.
There's actually two. Well, one, if you're with a group of people, whether it be 3 or more, even 4 more people, get walkie-talkies in case you guys, like, say, we were talking about the will-o-wisp in the woods. Some of us went off in the woods, and there's other groups. You want to be able to communicate with them at all times. So we have 10 to 12 walkies. I think something like maybe 10 that we all use. We all have one every investigation. But me personally, my favorite, and I think is the most useful piece, is called a K2 meter. It's the one that lights up and kind of flickers the colors between green and all the way up to red.
Right. Easy to see in the dark.
Exactly, and it's something that's easily used by spirits and stuff like that. But
Yeah, I think Hunter's answer is really good. Make sure you stay, if anybody's out there trying to go spirit hunting or ghost hunting, be safe. There's a lot of, even if it's not something luring you into the woods, you never know when you're going to trip on
There's
a branch.
abandoned places.
Coyotes out there.
Yeah.
We were
all
talking
those
about.
people that may be living in there. There's parts of walls or things that could be falling down. There's a lot of real dangers.
Yeah.
We might also want to touch on equipment you shouldn't use, such as Ouija boards and things like
Well,
that.
that's
are
a personal
questionable.
preference, but we all
We
grew
don't
up
suggest.
Yeah.
that
don't-
you be careful what you're
Yes.
inviting to come and talk to you. And
Yeah.
Because you don't know really what
With the
you're talking
Ouija
to.
board, you don't know what's on the other side. You don't know.
You may
who-
think you have a handle on that
Well,
side,
that
but the
kind
truth
of
is,
like with the dowsing rods.
well, but there's a protocol you do go by.
Yeah, you attune to use
Right.
a term. You attune the dowsing rods to you.
And we don't say that that's absolute proof of the paranormal. We try to validate that in a number of other ways with electronic equipment, what other people are getting. I think the best tool that anybody can ever use for paranormal hunting is yourself. People are naturally sensitive. We have built-in warning signs that we try to ignore now in modern society. But when you get that creepy feeling, when you hear something, don't be afraid to, move on with it. A lot of people say, oh, I want to discount that because I'm scared or
Right.
it means I'm crazy. I think our bodies are our best tool.
Right. If you think you hear something or you think you saw something, chances are you probably did. But, don't just be like, oh, hey, I don't, like what Shane was saying, I don't want to acknowledge that because I'm scared. If you really are truly invested in ghost hunting, you need to kind of open yourself up to that, open your mind up.
Keep an open mind. Be skeptical, but keep an open mind.
Right.
And let's see, we also got I think we all have the same opinion on this. The question, the way it's phrased is it safe to take younger children to a haunted house?
Well, you mean like our kind of haunted house?
I would assume not
Our
not
kind.
a
Fun house.
I would
theme
not
park.
do that because
They're more sensitive. Tend to be.
one, you're responsible for that younger person. They aren't making that decision for themselves. We're grown ups, we can make that decision.
Well, also, not to mention, a lot of these places
you
we
wouldn't
go
wanna
into are
risk,
dilapidated. You know what I
scaring
mean?
them, or if something is really negative, you don't want something to attach it to your child.
Well, that actually leads into the next question we have is, has anything ever followed any of you home?
Here we go.
Just
Is
brush them
anybody
off.
here now?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm here.
I mean, we don't have to talk
Tell
about
us.
that. That's,
Well, you don't have to go into any specifics or anything
Right.
you're not comfortable with, but
Well, we were talking about hen coop.
Yeah, I was going to
Go
say,
ahead, talk
our
about that.
first investigation with hen coop, we inadvertently brought home a hitchhiker.
should we talk
We
about what we do?
We're
beforehand?
Native Americans, so we protect ourselves going into this in different ways. We smoke ourselves. We do a couple other things. But when we smoke ourselves,
I don't know if a lot of
we
people
kind
know
of
what
did
that
it
is.
the same way we do the house. When we say no negative spirits, nothing evil, no malevolent thing, but you don't say good spirits because you may have good spirits you don't necessarily want out of your house. Well, in that first investigation, being our first, we learned hard that we have to say no spirits, not just bad spirits, but no spirits. This person came with us, probably followed Lisa home.
well, you got to
Lisa
play
Why is it
What's
always
up?
got to be me?
We were all there.
We'll explain how that magnet works on probably later podcasts. And my youngest daughter, 8-year-old, woke up, actually she was 7 at the time, to see this young woman in a ponytail and a long dress just sitting there staring at her with a smile on her face. Scared the crap out of her. So I had to go up and make sure that, that was taken care of. But with Lisa, we're extra careful of also protecting our home multiple times and sealing the property, things like that. One of the reasons we started doing this is because she's into it, but also to help her learn how to maybe manage that side of herself a little better.
So you guys obviously have. Christine, have you ever had any side effects from going on a hunt?
Not really. I mean, there was the one time I got the weird kidney pain when we did the one, but
At the
that-
Stone House.
at the
Yeah.
stone
Yeah.
house, and it kind of went away as we were
As you went
driving
away,
away.
but
I'm
As we were
not.
leaving,
That that could have just been something.
And we've all had those types of
But-
experiences where we had uncharacteristic pain.
Mhm.
Or
um,
headaches, dizziness?
Yeah, all of a sudden,
Nausea.
that
you know.
But as for taking anything home, no. I always promise my mom I won't bring anything
Yeah.
to.
And as
the
Shane
house.
kind of touched
and we
on,
try to be careful.
Yeah.
we all do as a group, Spirit Hunters. You know, we embrace diversity. Like for us, we take things that culturally we think are protective, medicine bundles or things like that. I know Christine takes her rosary, so we always do take precautions. Like I said, both for physical safety.
You never
and
know what you're going to be
spiritual
getting
safety.
into. You
Right.
don't know
And
what's
there's
there.
no one right way.
No.
Whatever your belief, your faith is,
That's
that's
your
what to
protection.
protect you. It's your faith because you have the ultimate power to protect yourself. The Creator or whoever, God, whatever you want to say, gave people that in our opinion, how we believe. And so, if Chrissy, and sometimes she'll mix the two. Sometimes she'll bring a rosary with her also. Whatever your faith is, as long as you believe it, and you ask for it, that's what usually will protect people.
Mm-hmm.
It's those that are doubtful and things like that sometimes are at risk.
I think that's probably a good point to wrap it up, right? So, thank you guys. As I said, this is the Spirit Hunters podcast. You can find us at Facebook, Instagram,
SpiritHunters.group.
Twitter, Snapchat,
TikTok.
TikTok, YouTube,
and YouTube.
and we have a website. Also, Lisa has a blog, Ghostly Chronicles.
It's a good name.
.com.
Chronicles.com. Yeah, and you can find the rest of us individually on Facebook, and we might put those links in the description for the video or the podcast if you're listening to it elsewhere.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back on, soon, hopefully with another podcast. Thank you for watching.
Okay, bye,
Podcast
guys.
number 1 complete.